just come back from Mallorca. I want to share with you what it's like outside here in South Wales on a regular Tuesday afternoon. That's the colour of the sky. It's grey. And it has been for days. But anyway, you know what they say, it's good to be back home. On the plus side, I guess I get to make this video and reminisce about some of those rides, and also tell you about one climb that we happened to find on the island that had over 20 hairpins. Never ridden the climb before, and I wonder if you've ever ridden it either. So it has to be said, going to Mallorca has become a yearly pilgrimage for myself and a couple of my mates. Most of my mates, actually, and I just third wheel. But I would say I do really enjoy being on the island. And there's plenty of other places around that is just as good, if not better maybe, than Mallorca for cycling. But this time of year, you know, it's very accessible, the flights are cheap, accommodation's fairly cheap as well, and you know, the island is fairly quiet. So if you're thinking of going out in October or November, I would highly recommend it. It's still short and Jersey weather, and as you've seen, it's pretty grey here in the UK as the weather is changing. Now when we fly out, we usually get a really early flight. We land in Mallorca super early. We headed over to Hotel Helios, which is where we stayed the last couple of years, because they cater really well for cyclists and the food there is top notch. The post-ride fries and mayo, top notch. And there's actually a code down below in the description if you fancy and going there next year on a cycling trip perhaps, or even just going there for a non-cycling trip. It's a top location. The only thing I would say is that it's a bit difficult to get to the mountains if you're heading through the middle of Palma or like along the coast. It's just a little bit of faff you have to do at the start and the end of your ride, but if you're heading in any other direction, it's no problem. So we landed, we built our bikes up, and we went out for lunch, and then in the afternoon before checking in properly, we went out for our usual opener ride, and this involved us heading like towards Randa, which is about 30 kilometers away inland, and you climb gradually all the way to the bottom of the actual climb, which is 5 kilometers at about 5%. And most of the climbs in this area on this side of the island, the northwest side, are kind of all very similar. It's not until you get towards Soyer, Sacalobra, that kind of region, where you get into some much longer, more challenging mountains. You also have longer descents, of course, so it depends what you're there for. But generally, if you stay in the Palma area, you get to access some mountains and you get a lot of the flat land along the other coastline of Mallorca too, which is where some of our rides took us later in the week, which I'll get to in a second. So we did our usual climb to Randa, but with a bit of a bonus climb. As you're going into the bottom, about 2 kilometers into the climb, there's a little shoot off to the right, and down this lane, kind of like an access road, there's a load of switchbacks down there. Now technically it's only one way, so I would be very careful in case you see any vehicles coming up or down, but I would highly recommend just riding it once, because if you like hairpins, if you like climbs, you can enjoy this little section of road. It's nothing special, but it's just a nice set of switchbacks. So that was our first ride, just a couple of hours, 60 kilometers, just getting in the groove. Straight back to Helios for that evening buffet. Now after a really big breakfast the following morning, we headed off through Palma and into the mountains over at Andracht. And that area is like it's kind of the last hilly section of the Mallorca 312. So you'd be very familiar with those roads if you've done the Mallorca 312 event. And you can get lost in these climbs. You could do a lot of altitude meters in a very short space of time. There's lots of 5-10 kilometer climbs about, and great for interval training. Actually, one of my favorite climbs on the whole island and descents is the military climb, the one that you do straight out of Palma and it takes you, towards Andracht and out into the mountains. It's just very smooth, very switchbacky, just some great corners one after the other. It's good fun going up, it's even more fun coming down. Just a little bit sketchy in the wet, so I'd be careful. Now this day was actually the day that we found this climb that we wanted to see on this trip that was full of hairpins, like the Alpe d'Huez of Mallorca, but almost classed as like the mini Sacalobra. Definitely like gave me the vibe, the way the road just like carved its way up through the valley and gradually topped out. Maybe not so much in the hairpins, Sacalobra doesn't have that many really, but this climb had loads. And better still, it was very quiet. Quieter than Valdemosa, which is another climb just down the road a little bit with equally similar terrain down to a port. So unfortunately, like many of these climbs, you have to descend, turn around and come back up. No rest for the wicked. Day 3, we decided to head out and do yet more climbing. Heading over to the Orient and doing a loop through the backcountry, somewhere I haven't been in 6, 7, 8 years. We decided to find this climb that I'd seen over on Instagram that a friend had shared with me. They'd been tarmacked a weird kind of orange colour. I think it was paint, but needless to say, the climb was outstanding. Very smooth tarmac. There was a couple of hidden nasty speed bumps on the climb itself that apparently some people had missed when they were coming down, and it caused an accident or two from what I'd heard from locals. Met a subscriber at the top of the climb, of all places, and actually thoroughly enjoyed the loop before stopping in Cycling Planet, or Planet Cycling, the CAF in Alaro. Again, a really nice place. If you're a fan of cycling memorabilia, that's the place to go. Day 4 was on the cards for a while. We wanted to go all the way over to the other side of the island, literally, from where we were staying in Palma, and go to Pescadores and check out the monastery just outside Arta. Now, this climb is a really short one, technically. It's like less than 2 or 3 kilometers. So it's a long way to ride just to do that one climb. But it is actually a really nice climb. Very, very narrow road. It's almost like a cycle path with some dotted white line up the middle. It's very smooth, very narrow, and actually there's a fair amount of cyclists that go to it as well. We saw one rider doing hill repeats on the backside of the climb down to the monastery, and it was a good place to do like 5 to 10 minute hill reps, maybe low cadence and things like that. But that day was a big 155 kilometer day, the biggest actual mileage day I've done in a long time, for at least a couple of months. And in terms of time, I mean, yeah, definitely the longest ride. 5.5 hours it took us. Very quick coming back, and that's the thing on Mallorca. You know, you can have wind in all directions, and it'll change throughout the day. So you might get a tailwind out in the morning, and you turn around, you think you're going to get a headwind back, and well, come the afternoon, the wind has changed direction, and you're actually getting a tailwind home as well. Now, the following day, I actually went out for a solo ride. Fueled yet again by potato waffles and some glorious buffet food from the night before. The thing was, I was going to meet somebody, and I had to be back by a certain time, so I ended up doing a bit of a loop through Espoirles and that northwest corner again near Andracht, and I did climb after climb after climb. There's a loop where in about 60 kilometers you can just do like literally no flat. It's just climb after climb. And I was doing some tempo work, just making sure I was getting back into some kind of routine with intensity, but nothing too hard. Bearing in mind, I'd been riding for the last 4 days, and I was only really going to take a rest day on the day we were traveling home. This day actually turned out to be a really good one. It was my first 3000 kilojoule training day. And the day before, we did 5.5 hours over the other side of the island. That wasn't much of a high power day, so the kilojoules was not like great at all, not a large amount. So because today I was doing some tempo work and I was riding on my own and I was climbing, I was able to bank a lot more work, a lot more intensity, and therefore I would class that as probably a really good training loop and a really good training day. Like I said, this kind of area of Mallorca, you know, if you really just want to stack climbs but not have them be too long and not have like the distance between them being, you know, too long, so the rests aren't too long, then this is a great place to hang out and do, you know, 10, 15, 20-minute climbs, rather than being, you know, in the north, the top north coast of the island, where you've got some 30, 40, maybe even 1 hour climbs, right? With, you know, quite large recoveries between them, but still. So I got back a little bit later than usual, and the other guys had done their own ride and they'd already ordered the chips and mayo for me by the time I got back. So I sat down, dug into the chips with them and debriefed on the day. Kept it a little bit secret from them that I had to stop in a petrol station about 15 kilometers from finishing that 150 kilometer ride and get some emergency Haribo and Aquarius, but needs must. I was a little bit salty and I was a little bit underfueled. Amateur. So after drying my kit out that night, and by the way, I'd only taken 2 pairs of shorts and 2 jerseys with me for this whole week, and I only had to wear shorts and jerseys. I didn't have to wear arm warmers or rain cape or anything. And I did the old trick of washing my kit in the shower. Simple, just use soap, wash your kit, wring it out and just put it inside your towel, wrap your towel up and like give it a good squeeze and twist. Hey presto, you've dried your kit. Well, at least got most of the moisture out. It's an old racing trick, and then you just hang it up on, well, the nearest TV you can find. So the last riding day, because the day after that we headed home, and there was time to ride in the morning, but I didn't think riding 90 minutes was worth it, so my last riding day was the day before we left. We ended up doing 2 hours along the kind of rolling roads of the southwest corner, if you will. Very fast roads. There'd actually been a storm that morning. We had to delay our start until 2 p.m. And that's something you can do in Mallorca. If the weather's barred for any reason, it's not necessarily barred for the whole day. Not like here in Wales where, well, if the weather's raining, it's going to be like that for the whole week, quite frankly. So we headed out, we made the most of the tailwind, and we bobbed it along. We did a little 2-hour loop and we called it a day, but that evening we booked into the sauna and the hot tub, jacuzzi, spa and the indoor swimming pool. A little bit cold to be in the outdoor swimming pool. We enjoyed just chilling out and sweating one out in the sauna. It's a good way to relax and a good way to finish the camp, because I knew that the next day we were just going to be travelling home. And that was it. It was a class week, essentially, in Mallorca. And I think I accumulated nearly 25 hours of riding in, well, 6 days virtually. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.